Who really was Genghis Khan? Welcome to Collapse, where history comes to life and every video immerses you in the destiny of those who have shaped the world. Today, prepare to travel back in time and follow the impressive rise of Genghis Khan, the steppe warrior who became master of the world. In just a few decades, this Mongol leader who started from nothing swept away empires, crossed frozen mountains and endless deserts, facing the greatest armies of his time. Ruthless tactics, military genius, unparalleled thirst for conquest. His name is etched in history, between terror and fascination. But beyond the myth, who really was this man who dreamed of an empire as vast as the sky? But before embarking on a new adventure, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to miss nothing. Thank you and bon voyage. In the 12th century, the world found itself at the heart of profound political, religious, and cultural changes. In Europe, the feudal system shaped the lives of millions. Kings, whether of France or England, sought to extend their authority, while local lords still held considerable power over their fiefs. Peasants, for the most part, worked the land in exchange for protection and a right to subsistence. On this fragmented continent, the vision of the sacred, carried by the Catholic Church, permeated all layers of society. The Pope, as the supreme spiritual authority, influenced political directions. Conflicts were plentiful, private wars between lords, succession disputes, and battles against foreign neighbors. In this context, European commerce was nonetheless experiencing a progressive boom. Northern Italy, with cities like Genoa, Pisa, or Venice, stood out for its maritime dynamism. Trade developed thanks to the relative security of routes and the proliferation of fairs, notably in Champagne. The demand for exotic products such as spices and silk led to the creation of new trading routes. Merchants gradually became a leading social force, while cities gained autonomy. At the same time, the Crusades, initiated at the end of the 11th century, opened a broader horizon to the Near East, triggering a process of often violent contacts, but also bringing unexpected cultural contributions. At the other end of the former Roman sphere, the Byzantine Empire was entering a slow decline. Its emperors, from the Comnenus dynasty, strove to regain control of strategic provinces lost to the Seljuks and Normans. But the central administration often proved ineffective, weakened by plots and rival factions. Military setbacks followed one after another, undermining imperial prestige. However, Constantinople remained a dazzling metropolis, rich in architectural marvels and diverse cultural influences. Italian merchants held counterpoints there, demonstrating the growing interconnection between East and West. Yet, the shadow of the Crusades hung over the region, with the Fourth Crusade between 1202 and 1204 soon to destabilize the empire even further. In the Near East, the crucial dynamic of the 12th century rested on the interaction between the Latin states, founded after the First Crusade between 1096 and 1099, and the local Muslim powers. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Tripoli, or the Principality of Antioch crystallized the ambitions of Western knights. However, these enclaves remained fragile. They suffered attacks and sieges, orchestrated in turn by different Islamic forces. Beyond the military conflict, this period saw Christians, Jews, and Muslims coexist in a climate of often heightened tensions, but also commercial coexistence. The exchange of art objects, military ideas, and agricultural techniques attest to a cultural permeability, despite the prevalence of war in the collective imagination. Parallelly, the great Muslim dynasties mark the history of the 12th century. The Abbasids, who have been leading the caliphate from Baghdad, still enjoy symbolic prestige, even if their territorial control is reduced. To the north and east, the Seljuks established powerful sultanates, particularly in Persia and Anatolia. To the west, the Fatimids dominate Egypt and part of the Levant, ensuring the intellectual influence of Cairo. In these urban centers, the rise of sciences and letters persists. Medicine, mathematics, and philosophy progress, linked with the translation of ancient Greek works. While Baghdad positions itself as a major cultural center, scholars of various faiths debate there, exchanging knowledge and interpretations on the nature of the universe. Further east, India offers an equally varied panorama. The Rajput kingdoms, proud of their independence and warrior traditions, vie for the northwest. Other dynasties, such as the Chola or the Chalukyas, emerge in the south and center, fostering the construction of monumental temples and the development of trade networks. India's spices, fabrics, and precious stones attract traders from Arabia, Persia, and even China. Ports on the west coast, such as Calicut or Kollam, become hubs for ships en route to the Persian Gulf. While Hinduism remains the majority, Islam gradually gains a foothold in coastal regions, strengthening the religious mosaic already enriched by Buddhism and Jainism. In the Chinese world, the 12th century is characterized by the division of the territory into several competing powers. The prestigious Song dynasty, established in the south, stands out for its technological advancements, the perfected compass, gunpowder, and the widespread use of printing. This effervescence supports a flourishing literary production, while internal and external trade exchanges stimulate the economy. In the north, the Jin dynasty, of Manchu origin, controls vast regions, rivaling with the Western Xia, who hold the more arid borders. The great prosperity of the region does not prevent recurring military tensions, each fearing incursions from nomadic peoples inhabiting the peripheries beyond the Great Wall. Indeed, the Eurasian steppe stretches like an ocean of grasslands, linking Eastern Europe to Mongolia, populated by numerous tribes and confederations. The Turkic, Tatar, and Mongol groups, among others, share a nomadic culture centered on herding and mobility. Horses provide them with formidable agility, whether for hunting or warfare. Living in yurts and moving across vast territories, these populations develop complex networks of alliances and rivalries. Clashes, dictated by the quest for pastures and livestock, can often lead to major disruptions of the political landscape. The warrior skills of these nomads perpetually raise suspicion from the surrounding sedentary states. The nomadic lifestyle characteristic of these populations is primarily based on herding, hunting, and gathering, although herding occupies the central place. Herds of horses, sheep, goats, and sometimes camels constitute the main wealth of families. The horse, in particular, is at the core of survival and cultural identity. It represents both a means of transport, a source of prestige, and a symbol of freedom. From their earliest years, men and women learn to ride horses with agility, developing equestrian skills that will, in times of conflict, become a formidable military asset. Thanks to this mobility, tribes can move with the seasons, in search of clear waters and greener pastures to feed their animals. Part of the work also involves protecting against harsh winters by settling in more sheltered areas, often near frozen watercourses, while storing enough provisions for the harshest seasons. Hunting, in addition to herding, serves not only to vary the diet, but also to perfect the mastery of mounted archery. The composite bow, made from wood, horn, and tendons, is a key piece of the nomadic arsenal. Its range and power, superior to simpler bows, make it a formidable weapon. At that time, hunting also plays a social role. It tests courage and coordination in action, and sometimes serves as an initiation rite. Across the steppe, the ability to pursue a swift beast and shoot arrows accurately becomes a prestige criterion for hunters who gain respect and influence within their clan. In parallel, the social fabric of Mongol tribes rests on an organization of clans and subclans, sometimes united to form larger entities. At the head of these groups, leaders or khans must constantly prove their worth, either through success in battle or generosity towards their people. Within each clan, blood ties and kinship are paramount. They dictate inheritance, livestock distribution, and defensive alliances. Oral traditions passed down from generation to generation reinforce the feeling of belonging to a lineage. Elders, due to their accumulated knowledge, often serve as advisors, and their voice counts in decision-making assemblies. However, the hierarchy remains relatively flexible. A leader who is too unpopular or too weak risks seeing his supporters abandon him to join a more powerful or generous clan. Marriage alliances also serve as a crucial diplomatic tool in this world of the steppe. Marrying a neighboring chief's daughter or offering one's own sister in marriage seals peace treaties and consolidates military pacts. Women from these unions often become guarantors of stability between two tribes, sometimes rivals just the day before. In this system, the family extends beyond the immediate circle, and these kinship ties can span several generations. However, these alliances, as useful as they are, remain fragile and fluctuate with political and military changes. The breaking of an agreement or the emergence of a conflict can quickly turn a former ally into an arch enemy, and vice versa. Within this vast network of ties, several major tribal confederations stand out at the end of the 12th century and the beginning of the 13th century. Among the most important are the Tatars, the Merkits, the Naimans, and the Karaites. Each of these groups has its cultural specificities, founding legends, and ambitious leaders. The Tatars, for example, are known for their military prowess and recurrent hostility towards other Mongol clans. The name Tatar even appears in some earlier Chinese sources, attesting to their feared reputation. The Merkits, on the other hand, inhabit the northern regions of the steppe and are often characterized by their well-established clan organization and occasional alliances with other Turco-Mongol peoples. The Naimans, situated further west near the Altai Mountains, form a rich and powerful confederation, partly due to their trade relations with neighboring regions. Their name, meaning eight in some Turkic languages, would refer to the idea of a union of several tribes. Finally, the Karaites, sometimes Christianized, notably Nestorians, enjoy a certain prestige due to their singular religion within the Mongol world and their proximity to trade routes linking Mongolia to northern China. Among these entities, rivalries are abundant. Control of the pastures remains a constant issue as the steppe regenerates unevenly over the seasons. Quality pastures, endowed with sustainable water points, are contested treasures. Possession of livestock, especially horses, ensures not only economic survival, but also military power. Consequently, simple disagreements over the use of a grassy area can escalate into armed conflicts. Sometimes, a mere theft of horses, an unresolved commercial dispute, or a perceived disrespectful welcome can trigger a widespread vendetta. Revenge then becomes a moral duty to wash away the affront and preserve the honor of the clan. Tribal wars often come with raids, plundering, and kidnappings aimed at weakening the opponent. Prisoners, if they are not executed, can can be forcibly integrated into the victorious clan as servants or workers. In some cases, they might even gain higher status if they distinguish themselves through bravery or skill. Noble captives, on the other hand, sometimes hold substantial ransom value, and their release can be negotiated in exchange for horses, livestock, or even peace agreements. This practice of exchanging and ransoming prisoners is common in the steppe and forms part of the survival strategy of many tribes. To defend themselves or launch an offensive, each confederation relies on its network of alliances, which often proves volatile. A tribe that fights alongside the Merkits against the Tatars in the spring may perfectly well ally with those same Tatars the following autumn to break the growing hegemony of the Karaits if the latter threatens a vital access to water or trade. These shifts in alliances are all the more frequent, given that leaders are primarily pragmatic. Absolute loyalty to a partner is not the cardinal principle, unlike the necessity to protect one's own survival. Negotiations, sometimes sealed by marriages or exchanges of cattle, thus constitute an important part of nomadic diplomacy. The fraternization ceremonies, where two leaders seal a pact by drinking fermented mare's milk, kumis, or exchanging gifts, are quite common. But within the steppe, these commitments are only secure as long as they serve the respective interests of their signatories. The incessant cycle of competition for supremacy or for defending territory gives rise to a succession of betrayals and alliances that makes the whole extremely complex. Chronicles of the time, particularly those later compiled by Mongol scribes or foreign scholars, describe this climate of permanent uncertainty, where each camp tries to take advantage of the general instability. These political maneuvers, however, reflect the importance of a clan's internal cohesion. To withstand an adversary's attack, it is crucial to have a disciplined army, a respected leader, and a code of conduct accepted by all. To maintain order, many khans practice a form of summary justice, severely sanctioning those who violate clan solidarity, like horse thieves or conspirators aiming to overthrow established authority. In these constant wars and complex dealings, the notion of warrior prestige should not be underestimated. Mongol tribes greatly value bravery and military success. A warrior who has proven his worth on the battlefield can attain higher status or even aspire to a command role. Rumors of epic battles, spread by merchants or wandering messengers through the steppe, contribute to the fame of a clan. When it is known that a certain group has defeated a renowned opponent, conquered a rich enemy camp, or showed clemency towards a noble rival, the legend grows. Within alliances, stories of bravery thus serve to deter potential aggressors and attract new followers seeking security or glory. This balancing act between economic survival, matrimonial alliances, age-old rivalries, and military prestige defines the main dynamics of the emergence of Mongol tribes at the end of the 12th century. The geographical and climatic environment is the foundation of their way of life. Without horses, cattle, and access to sufficient pastures, no tribe is able to endure. Conflicts inevitably arise from these constraints and the growing ambition of leaders. Networks of alliances are made and broken, shaping the political landscape of the steppe without a lasting central authority. In this tumultuous context, some clans stand out by their ability to gather a large number of allies, establish common laws or customs, or innovate in their combat methods. In the vast expanse of the steppe, around the year 1162 according to most historical estimates, the one who would later be known as Genghis Khan was born, but who was then called Temujin. Legend has it that at Temujin's birth, he came into the world holding in his tiny fist a clot of blood. For believers and the superstitious, This sign foretold a warrior destiny. This tale, widespread in Mongolian oral traditions, underscores the symbolic importance attributed to this newborn. Although this event cannot be verified by historians, it suggests that from a young age, Temujin was surrounded by stories and omens that fueled the notion of his future greatness. This mythical aura gradually crystallized, nurtured by storytellers and keepers of memory, who saw in him the seed of profound change among the Mongolian tribes. The father, Yesugei, was a chief from the Borjigin clan, a group claiming descent from a legendary ancestor named Bodonchar. The Borjigin considered themselves superior to many other clans, notably due to this ancestry they deemed noble. Nonetheless, in the daily reality of the steppe, survival depended less on genealogy than on the ability to lead the troop, negotiate alliances, and protect one's livestock. Yesugei had gained a certain renown for his military successes and diplomatic skills, although he was not a figure of comparable stature to the chiefs of larger clans like the Tatars or the Karaits. However, the existence of Temujin would give him newfound importance in generations to come. Temujin's mother, Heolun, played a central role in shaping the young boy. Sources describe her as a woman of courage and resourcefulness, capable of watching over her children in the direst contexts of the steppe. Indeed, Heolun did not originally belong to the same clan as Yesugei. She had been abducted by him while she was already married to another man. This practice, common among nomadic tribes, did not prevent Heolun from becoming the head of the family after the brutal death of her husband, asserting a crucial role in the children's upbringing. Her experience and tireless energy would influence the resilient character of young Temujin, who learned early the importance of mutual aid and resourcefulness to survive in such a harsh environment. The death of Yesugei, Temujin's father, occurred when the boy was about 8 or 9 years old, a pivotal age for a child expected to receive martial and tribal training. The circumstances of this death are shrouded in mystery and legends. Most accounts speak of poisoning by the Tatars, a long-standing enemy of the Borjigin and other tribes. Yesugei was said to be the victim of revenge or treachery that abruptly ended his ambitions and left his family in dire straits. Deprived of a protector, Heolun and her children were soon abandoned by the clan they depended on. Yesugei's close associates considered that with their leader's disappearance, the family was no longer of interest. This act of abandonment was not merely a simple disavowal, it was also a blow to their survival. Temujin, his brothers, and his mother thus found themselves isolated, devoid of significant means, and forced to settle where no one else would, on barren lands lacking resources. To subsist, they had to gather wild berries, hunt small animals, and sometimes fish in the frozen rivers of the steppe. This harsh existence forged the young boy's character. He learned early to wield the bow, ride horses, and hide to stalk prey or fend off human predators. According to some accounts, Temujin even killed his half-brother Bektar in a quarrel over the distribution of food, revealing a fierce determination to protect his mother and brothers. This episode, though tragic, shows how survival took precedence over any form of traditional morality among children left to their own devices. In the daily life of these early years, he was forced to observe the ruthless laws of the steppe. Without the protection of a powerful clan, however, he became more vulnerable to enemy raids and abductions. It was common in this nomadic society to be kidnapped by a rival group, either to be enslaved or to serve as a hostage. Such trials explain why, From childhood, Temujin was confronted with the art of suspicion and cunning. It was imperative to gain the trust of potential allies, consolidate friendships, and above all, avoid falling under the sway of hostile leaders. Any mistake could be fatal, and the slightest misstep came at a high price. Towards adolescence, Temujin engaged in the traditional learning of the nomad, falcon hunting, horse training, and practicing archery while galloping across the steppe. He also familiarized himself with the internal organization of the clans, learning that a man's loyalty, even a warrior's, was earned as much by the promise of protection as by sharing the spoils. Although lacking material possessions, he could count on the symbolic heritage of his father, Yasuge, and the maternal bravery of Hoelun to forge some credibility. Soon, the simple teenager became a respected warrior, whom some saw as the worthy successor of his fallen father. Others, however, still considered him a potential rival to be eliminated. A key event of this formative period was Temujin's encounter with Jamuka, a young man from another clan. It is said they became adaz, or blood brothers, a sacred relationship in Mongolian culture, which went far beyond ordinary friendship. Together, they shared fermented mare's milk from the same cup, mutually committing to assist each other in all circumstances. Jamuka also aspired to become a notable leader, and from this time there was a mix of brotherhood and rivalry between the two boys. Nevertheless, at that time, the spirit of cooperation prevailed, and their relationship was strong enough to later face common dangers. It was in this atmosphere of constant danger and timid hopes that Temujin considered marriage. A matrimonial alliance represented much more than a simple sentimental union. It was a way to consolidate ties between different groups. His future wife, Berta, belonged to a neighboring clan, but her exact origins differ according to accounts. It seems accepted that she came from a relatively modest family. By asking for her hand in marriage, Temujin followed the Mongolian customs, where agreement between families was essential, and where the dowry and gifts wove sometimes crucial alliances. Unfortunately, even before the new union could be fully sealed, Berta was kidnapped by the Merkits, a people known for their violent raids. This abduction illustrated the ongoing instability faced by young couples and families scattered across the steppe. The Merkits considered the abduction as revenge, or a means to strengthen their own clan, while Temujin experienced it as a personal tragedy and a public affront. For a young leader in the making, having his fiancée kidnapped was not only a humiliation, but also a loss of prestige. He then had to rely on his entire network of potential alliances to restore his honor and that of his future family. Aware of his own limitations, Temujin called upon Togrul Khan, also known as Ong Khan, the powerful leader of the Karites. Togrul Khan had already associated with Yasuge and respected the memory of Temujin's father, which hinted at a possibility of support. The Karite leader was open to the idea of helping an ambitious young warrior, especially if he saw a political advantage. With the support of Togrul Khan, Temujin was able to assemble enough men and horses to carry out a punitive expedition against the Merkits. In this undertaking, he also sought the help of Jamuka, his Anda. It was the first time Temujin embarked on a larger military action, supported by allies ready to follow him into battle. The goal went beyond simply recovering Berta. It was also about proving his worth as a leader and showing that he was capable of defending his honor and his future home. The campaign to recover Berta was brief but decisive. The Merkits, unprepared for a coordinated attack supported by an important leader like Togrul Khan, could not withstand the coalition formed around Temujin. Oral accounts describe stealthy assaults, guided by the agility of Mongol horsemen, feints intended to sow panic among the enemy, and strategies where cunning was as important as strength. The Merkits, despite their reputation as fierce fighters, had to give way to an offensive carried out swiftly and methodically. In this whirlwind of chaos, Temujin succeeded in finding Berta, who was rescued from captivity. Whether she had suffered violence or not, her abduction certainly left a profound impact on the couple, and forced Temujin to consider the necessary protection of his loved ones as a central point in his political and military future. Subsequently, Temujin consolidated his alliance with Genghis Khan. The fact that such an influential leader trusted a young man from a previously isolated group is a testament to Temujin's diplomatic skill. This relationship was not limited to a simple exchange of protections. Genghis Khan saw it as an opportunity to forge lasting ties with someone who seemed destined for greatness. For his part, Temujin learned a great deal by observing how Togrul ruled over the Karaites, how he negotiated, promised, or threatened to maintain the balance within the confederation of clans. This tacit learning would help shape the future Genghis Khan, developing his political sense and his nuanced understanding of power dynamics on the steppe. Once Berti returned, Temujin married her officially. Their union was of considerable importance for the legitimization of his nascent authority. Berta, beyond her personal qualities, embodied a symbol of stability and continuity. She was the living testament to Temujin's victory over adversity and demonstrated his ability to defend those he considered his family and clan. In the Mongolian society of the time, women played an essential role. They maintained the household, managed the herds in the absence of their husbands, and sometimes even advised them on strategic decisions. Chroniclers of the era, intrigued by this female figure often overshadowed by the glory of Temujin, recognize an undeniable influence of Berta on the future choices of Genghis Khan. From adolescence, Temujin and Jamuka formed a solid friendship, marked by a symbolic brotherhood pact. Initially, their friendship went beyond mere political considerations. Jamuka and Temujin shared a genuine mutual respect, demonstrating an authentic brotherhood. They exchanged gifts, attended ritual ceremonies together, and conducted joint military campaigns against common enemies. Oral accounts from the period report that the two men frequently praised each other. Some later chroniclers even describe their early victories as those of two inseparable brothers in arms. Progressing side by side, they encouraged neighboring tribes to ally with them. The idea that two talented leaders were joining forces first inspired cooperation and aroused the interest of veteran warriors in search of booty and prestige. Yet, over time, differences in character and ambition emerged. Temujin, shaped by the trials of his childhood, tended toward a more pragmatic and inclusive style of leadership. He knew how to earn the loyalty of his men by rewarding courage and allowing a place for those not of his lineage. The example of his own household, which welcomed various fighters from different backgrounds, illustrates this openness. Jamuka, for his part, was more attached to traditional hierarchies. He often favored nobles and imposed himself as a strict leader. Over the course of their conquests, this divergence in style created friction. Some warriors, disappointed by Jamuka's rigidity, found in Temujin a more equitable leader, valuing personal commitment rather than mere nobility. The breaking point occurs when Temujin's ambition proves to be broader than expected. The two Andas had initially agreed to share the spoils of their campaigns, But Jamuka is concerned about his friend's too rapid rise. Temujin does not merely rely on traditional structures. He offers command posts to brave men, sometimes from modest clans, breaks the rigidity of established ranks, and fosters a spirit of camaraderie within his army. Moreover, he forms marital alliances with influential families from neighboring tribes, further strengthening his influence. Discord grows. Jamuka views these methods as a threat to the social order, believing that original nobility should prevail. At the same time, he fears losing loyal followers, as some of his warriors begin to look towards Temujin's army, known for its effectiveness and the prospect of interesting gains. The split between the two men is sealed during a tribal assembly, called by Jamuka, where he accuses Temujin of encroaching on his legitimate leadership prerogatives. Tensions crystallize, and many clans must choose their side. What was once only a veiled rivalry becomes an open conflict. Many fighters hesitate because loyalty is not just a matter of blood ties. It can be negotiated around the sharing of loot, recognition for acts of bravery, or even the hope of a stable future. Temujin then uses remarkable diplomacy. By promising to distribute wealth equitably, he attracts warriors from diverse backgrounds. Herders or mercenaries without a stable clan find a place with him. His reputation for generosity towards allies, which he carefully circulates, arouses curiosity. At the same time, he knows how to use terror against those who firmly oppose him. Through sometimes bloody coups, he makes it clear that prolonged struggle against his rise can be fatal. Gradually, Temujin's army grows. Strategic marital ties are formed. For instance, sisters or daughters of influential chiefs are married to his sons or brothers, thus cementing new alliances. This practice, common in nomadic societies, strengthens his political network. If a local chief knows that his own descendant has married a member of Temujin's family, he will hesitate before opposing him. Meanwhile, Temujin develops a reward system that goes beyond the family circle, distributing to deserving warriors livestock, quality weapons, or even slaves taken from the enemy. For a steppe fighter, joining Temujin represents an opportunity to escape the uncertainties of random plundering and become part of a more organized and lucrative entity. This progression leads to direct confrontation with various traditional adversaries of the Mongols. For a long time, the Tatars have posed a threat to the region's tribes. Skilled warriors, they monopolize certain essential trade routes in the northeast. Towards the end of the 12th century, Temujin sets out on a campaign against them, first securing the support of allies he has recently convinced. Accounts speak of remarkable tactical use. With a surprise attack, his mounted archers scatter Tatar forces and sow panic within their camps. The victory over the Tatars is a turning point. Temujin gains immense prestige and loot. The Tatars, who once killed his father, now become a subjugated population, and this personal vengeance helps forge his legend. Buoyed by this success, Temujin then turns to the Merkits, another powerful and longtime rival tribe. The Merkits had previously abducted Berta, Temujin's wife, which had forged a lasting enmity. This time, Temujin is ready. His army, hardened after the campaign against the Tatars, employs encirclement maneuvers and demonstrates new discipline. The speed of the Mongol cavalry, combined with a clear chain of command, surprises the Merkits. After violent battles, the Merkits waver, and some of them submit. With each victory, Temujin extends his control, integrates new captives, and consolidates a group of loyal officers who spread his reputation. The terror he inspires in his enemies, coupled with his sense of clemency for those who surrender in time, makes him formidable. A final major challenge lies in confronting the Naimans, a clan feared for their military might and numerous alliances. The Naimans occupy a key area of the western steppe, sometimes serving as a passage point for caravans coming from the west. Temujin, determined to unify all Mongolian tribes, knows that he will inevitably have to face them. The Naiman army, with its tradition of bravery and independence, does not allow itself to be intimidated. Their leader, aware of Temujin's meteoric rise, attempts to form a coalition that would include, if possible, all those dissatisfied with the rising dominance of the future Genghis Khan. However, Temujin, a skilled diplomat, sabotages these maneuvers by sending emissaries to some Naiman lords, promising them wealth and status if they pledged allegiance to him. Several hesitate, leading to internal divisions. When the time comes, Temujin gathers his forces and launches a decisive assault. Contemporary sources mention the violence of this battle. Despite fierce resistance, the Naimans, whose ranks are already weakened by treachery, cannot stop the Mongol offensive. After their defeat, many survivors, impressed by Temujin's energy, rally to him. With each victory, Temujin's notoriety grows. He is portrayed as a leader capable of inspiring his men, rewarding courage, and maintaining a certain order within his troops. It is often noted that, unlike other more traditionalist leaders, he does not restrict promotions to only Mongol aristocrats. If a soldier displays exceptional bravery or great tactical intelligence, he may be granted higher responsibilities. This practice, foreign to most mentalities of the time, appeals to many warriors. Thus, a new loyalty system takes shape, no longer solely based on clan affiliation, but rather on demonstrated valor in battle and personal loyalty. This provides Temujin with unique strategic flexibility. He can afford to break the traditional tribal order in favor of a more unified, disciplined organization, offering more opportunities to those who follow him. On the political scene, Jamuka sees this evolution increasingly negatively. He too had the ambition to unite the tribes, but according to the old standards, where nobility played a central role and where the transfer of power was based on birth. However, seeing Temujin build a massive army around a rudimentary meritocratic code, Jamuka realizes that he is losing his status as the main contender for Mongol supremacy. The coalition attempts he initiates cannot rival the momentum of allegiance generated by Temujin. Many warriors now prefer the stability of a leader who keeps his promises and does not discriminate between noble and humble origins, as long as loyalty to him is total. At this stage, the original alliance with Jamuka has long since shattered. Jamuka has become the rival. From an old friend, he gradually transforms into an archenemy, despite shared memories. This tragic shift highlights the deeply human dimension of power struggles. Friendship clashes with ambition, and primitive loyalty gives way to political choices dictated by the rise of a charismatic leader. But for Temujin, it is precisely in this rupture that he finds the legitimacy of a new governance model, a leader capable of transcending tribal limits and making the steppe a unified space. Traditional values remain a foundation, but he grafts onto them an administration more oriented towards efficiency, discipline, and recognition of merit. The Kurultai, or tribal assembly, held significant importance in the political culture of nomadic peoples. It was a gathering of clan leaders, influential warriors, advisors, and representatives of various allied groups. Beyond merely discussing strategies and concluding agreements, the Kurultai was an opportunity to forge a consensus around a leader. In the Mongolian plains, marked by pastoral farming and the constant mobility of tents called yurts, nothing was more valuable than a public agreement between representatives of numerous family branches. However, this time, the assembly was of unprecedented scale. Tribes that formerly waged war against each other or maintained ephemeral alliances were present in large numbers, aware that Temujin's authority had grown exponentially over the recent years. It was in this climate of solemnity and collective hope that a new chapter in Mongolian history was sealed. During this Kurultai of 1206, Temujin was officially proclaimed Genghis Khan. The choice of this title carries a strong symbolic dimension. Historians often debate its exact meaning. Some see it as the idea of a vast ocean or an immense expanse, while others prefer the interpretation of universal ruler. Whatever the precise origin of this designation, it is evident that the term refers to the notion of colossal power, transcending mere tribal boundaries. The moment of the proclamation was infused with ritualized ceremony. Each clan leader, from the eldest to the promising young warriors, swore an oath of allegiance. The most imposing gesture was probably the ritual of elevation on a platform or carpet, a tangible symbol of ascent to the pinnacle of power. Accounts from the time report that the entire step resounded with acclamations, while drums and trumpets punctuated this new political order. With this solemn coronation, Genghis Khan immediately undertook to strengthen the cohesion of his young empire. He established an innovative code of laws, the Yasa. This term evoked a set of rules intended to foster the unity of tribes under a single authority. However, the Yasa was not merely a compilation of decrees. It constituted a legislative foundation aimed at structuring daily life, specifying relations between families, regulating the sharing of booty, and managing conflicts. In nomadic traditions, where writing held a less central place than in sedentary civilizations, orality and customary tradition dominated. Nevertheless, Genghis Khan understood the importance of clearly establishing prohibitions and obligations to limit internal disturbances. This law established, for example, severe penalties against treason, theft, and disobedience. It also protected the lives of ambassadors and guaranteed the respect of pacts, a crucial principle for tribes that had been constantly at war until then. Beyond its practical dimension, the Yasa held a quasi-sacred authority. By publicly promulgating it, Genghis Khan conveyed that the Mongolian order no longer depended on the whims of a few isolated chiefs, but was now based on a common law, meant to be infallible and unshakable. To further fortify this unity, Genghis Khan profoundly reorganized the Mongolian army. Aware that the success of his reign depended largely on military strength, he adopted a decimal system that became the backbone of his future campaigns. The principle was simple, but remarkably effective. The army was divided into groups of 10 soldiers, Arban, 100 soldiers, Zun, 1,000 soldiers, Mingkan, and 10,000 soldiers, Tumen. Each echelon had a commander responsible not only for discipline, but also for tactical coordination. This structure, unprecedented on the scale of the steppe, ensured a clear chain of command. Orders were quickly transmitted, facilitating responsiveness to unforeseen events. Thanks to the decimal system, the Great Khan could mobilize his troops with formidable efficiency. The flexibility of these units allowed for strategies of encirclement, diversion, and frontal assault, depending on needs. This military organization would soon prove to be a major asset in consolidating his internal authority. In parallel, Genghis Khan imposed a surprisingly modern principle for the time: promotion based on merit rather than noble heritage or family ties. Warriors who distinguished themselves in battle, showed courage, or rendered exceptional services to the community could attain important positions regardless of their birth. This meritocratic system, unusual in a world governed by clan hierarchies, allowed the unification of different groups and retained talented men. Legend even has it that some of Temujin's former enemies, impressed by his foresight and the opportunity to quickly climb the ranks, chose to join him rather than continue a hopeless fight. By promoting social advancement based on skills, Genghis Khan sent a clear message: loyalty and value in battle or administration outweighed blood and lineage. This broad recruitment policy offered conquered tribes the prospect of a beneficial future under the Great Khan's rule, instead of seeing him solely as a foreign leader imposing his law. In addition to selecting leaders, Genghis Khan paid particular attention to discipline and the sharing of spoils. Under the Yasa, strict rules governed how to distribute the wealth acquired during campaigns. Warriors expected to receive a fair share of what was taken from defeated foes. This system, which could be described as controlled redistribution, reinforced solidarity within the army. No one was left out, and this policy prevented grievances that could harm the group's unity. Moreover, the strict pursuit of unauthorized plundering and abuses against local populations reinforced the image of a just leader, firmly opposed to anarchy. Exemplary punishments against thieves and troublemakers sent a clear warning. In this nascent empire, one could no longer sow discord with impunity. The growing number of men convinced by this military fairness remained a pledge of stability for Genghis Khan, who could thus rely on a cohesive and disciplined army. The importance of mobility in the Mongol army cannot be underestimated. The Mongol horsemen, renowned for their endurance, covered long distances in record time. The steppe horses, smaller than their European or Middle Eastern counterparts, were nonetheless extremely sturdy and suited to harsh climates. Indeed, a Mongol rider often owned several mounts, which he would switch between to maintain a high pace of movement. This tactic, coupled with minimalist provisioning, warriors notably carried reserves of fermented mare's milk, called arag, and a handful of dry food, significantly reduced dependency on traditional supply routes. The Mongols' ability to strike quickly and retreat just as swiftly over long distances took many of their adversaries by surprise, who were often unaccustomed to facing an army so perfectly adapted to the varied terrains of Eurasia. Alongside this mobility, Genghis Khan established iron discipline. Orders had to be promptly obeyed, and any failure likely to undermine the troops' cohesion was severely punished. Respect for the hierarchy was such that no soldier, regardless of rank or origin, could exempt themselves from the rule. This rigor was a crucial element in successfully executing complex military maneuvers, notably the famed encirclement technique called tulugma. This tactic combined feints, flanking, and coordinated frontal attacks, often preventing the enemy from reorganizing. In an engagement, the Mongol army would start by harassing the adversary from a distance with volleys of arrows, occasionally feigning retreat to lure the enemy into a less favorable area. Once the adversary was disoriented, they would envelop its forces from the wings, gradually closing the trap to annihilate their capacity for resistance. The formidable efficiency of this method lay in the flexibility of the Mongol troops, capable of spreading over vast areas while remaining coordinated through visual or auditory signals. Victory did not rest solely on brute force. Genghis Khan also paid particular attention to intelligence and espionage. The Mongols, once famed for their simple raids, developed a network of seasoned informants and scouts who preceded the armies, mapping routes and assessing enemy forces. This collection of strategic information allowed them to adjust battle plans based on terrain, weather, and the composition and motivation of enemy troops. Sometimes merchants or travelers were also used as sources of information, conveying coded messages across hostile territories. Consequently, Genghis Khan encouraged the movement of military leaders over considerable distances so they could share their observations and anticipate potential difficulties. Adaptability was the key word for him. The Mongols did not hesitate, for example, to integrate assault techniques from their prisoners of war, whether it was siege machines or defensive innovations. Beyond the concrete mechanics of power, the spiritual dimension played a fundamental role in the legitimacy of Genghis Khan. The Mongols, like most steppe peoples, maintained a deep connection with the sky and nature. The concept of Tengri, often translated as eternal sky, embodied a protective and omnipresent deity. By proclaiming himself the sole Khan at the Kurultai, Temujin placed himself under the blessing of Tengri, claiming a celestial mandate to rule all tribes. According to this religious interpretation, if the sky allowed his ascent, it was because the ancestors and higher forces validated his steps. This reinforced the quasi-sacred dimension of his authority. Any fierce opposition appeared to run counter to divine will. In this light, the quest for unity was not just a purely political project. It was part of a cosmic order where the Grand Khan, chosen by Tengri, had the mission to maintain harmony among men. Genghis Khan's declared desire was to unify and pacify the steppe in order to ensure prosperity to all those who fit into this new imperial framework. For the first time, the Mongols were offered lasting stability and the prospect of a universal empire, going well beyond temporary agreements or fragile alliances. This aspiration to pacify the steppe, a paradoxical term when considering the conquest to come, nevertheless reflected a sincere objective: to put an end to perpetual wars between tribes, establish a common code, and pave the way for a new era, where looting and endless struggles would transform into opportunities for trade and influence. It was about guaranteeing the different clans, even old rivals, a more stable life under the aegis of a single competent and legitimate leader. Among the steppe warriors, many saw in this project a promise of order and victory. In the first decade of the 13th century, the growing power of Genghis Khan and his Mongol army turned toward the rich northern lands of China. At that time, the Asian continent was divided into several political entities, including the Jin dynasty in the north, the Song dynasty in the south, and the western Xia kingdom to the west. The Jin, originating from a Jurchen people, historically linked to the Manchus today, governed a vast territory encompassing a large part of northern China. The Song, on their part, controlled the south and harbored deep mistrust towards the Jin, their former adversaries. The western Xia, meanwhile, were situated between the Mongols and the heart of China, maintaining their independence as best they could thanks to a network of fortresses and their knowledge of the desert terrain. In this complex context, internal rivalries between Jin, Song, and western Xia opened doors to Mongol expansion, especially when alliances faltered and demands for military aid multiplied. Genghis Khan, after having brought under his authority the majority of the nomadic tribes of the steppe, saw in northern China a prospect of conquest both strategic and lucrative. Genghis Khan began his first major campaign towards the border of the Jin Empire in 1209. Despite the recognized military power of the Jurchens, the Mongols had considerable advantages. They excelled in mobility, thanks to their robust mounts and strict discipline, and mastered the composite bow, whose range and shooting speed often surpassed those of sedentary armies. The Jin, on their side, heavily depended on imposing fortresses built to withstand potential invasions. However, their political military structure was weakened by court rivalries, where the dynamic between imperial power and the great generals often proved chaotic. The initial combats between 1209 and 1211 took the form of Mongol incursions aimed at testing the Jin defenses while accumulating loot and intelligence. In 1211, the campaigns intensified. The Mongol armies, divided into several columns to sow confusion, launched lightning attacks in the border areas. The Jin generals quickly understood the gravity of the threat and attempted to organize coordinated resistance. However, the legendary speed of the Mongol cavalry bewildered the imperial troops, which were often heavy and less mobile. The Mongols also adopted a feint tactic, simulating retreats to lure the enemy into traps where encirclement became fatal. The Jin dynasty, under pressure, sent envoys to negotiate peace, offering temporary tributes to avoid major disaster. Yet, Genghis Khan, encouraged by his initial victories, saw a bigger picture. He wanted not only a favorable agreement, but also the humiliation of the Jin Empire, which he considered an obstacle to his expansion. From 1212 to 1213, conflicts continued and escalated. The fortified border towns, previously considered nearly impregnable, fell one after the other under Mongol control. To succeed, Genghis Khan adopted innovative methods that his young army learned along the way. First, he integrated qualified prisoners into his service, including Chinese engineers and siege warfare specialists. These newcomers taught the use of war machines such as catapults, trebuchets, and heavy battering rams. By capturing these tools and adapting them to the steppe conditions, the Mongols gradually overcame their main weakness, the capture of fortified cities. Furthermore, captured artisans built siege towers and perfected the use of incendiary projectiles, giving Genghis Khan's armies a destructive capability previously unknown to them. As the Mongols breached the advanced defenses of the Jin, terror spread in the Chinese cities. Genghis Khan's tactic combined massive intimidation with the promise of sparing populations that surrendered without a fight. Many localities preferred to avoid the plight of a bloody siege and negotiated their surrender, letting the Mongol machine crash into the Chinese urban system. Prisoners who were able, whether simple soldiers or of higher rank, were often requisitioned to reinforce the Mongol army or to serve as guides in unknown territories. Thus, from region to region, Genghis Khan increased his numbers and expanded his expertise by relying on local talent, not hesitating to incorporate into his ranks enemy officers convinced of his superiority. The operations carried out between 1213 and 1214 culminated in a series of sieges that shook the foundations of the Jin dynasty. The Mongols gradually turned their attention to major cities, including Zhongdu, the former capital, located on the site of present-day Beijing. The Jin, aware of the symbolic and economic importance of this stronghold, concentrated a large garrison there and deployed thick ramparts. The city, protected by its strategic location between rivers and presenting renovated fortifications, appeared capable of withstanding for a long time. However, Genghis Khan implemented a thorough plan. He encircled Zhongdu, cut its supply routes, and subjected it to repeated assaults to test its most vulnerable defenses. The catapults, now integrated into the Mongol arsenal, launched incendiary projectiles over the walls, causing the fire to various internal structures and spreading panic. During the year 1214, facing increasing pressure, the Jin court repeatedly considered fleeing further south to escape the Mongol encirclement. This hesitation shocked the Chinese population, who began to doubt the sovereign's ability to defend Zhongdu. The outposts fell one after the other, and the lack of effective reinforcements from neighboring provinces heightened the capital's isolation. Aware of the critical situation, the Jin emperor attempted to initiate new peace negotiations. He offered a substantial tribute, including silks, gold, horses, and precious items, in the hope that Genghis Khan would agree to lift the siege. For a time, the Mongol Khan pretended to be sensitive to this proposal and seemed to withdraw, sparking hope for a reprieve for the city. Finally, in 1215, the outcome unfolds. The Mongols resumed their attacks on Zhongdu with renewed intensity. The fortifications, already tested by previous assaults, and the lack of ammunition to defend them, gradually gave way. Demoralization spread among the Jin ranks, and a severe famine heightened the suffering of the inhabitants. At the beginning of spring, the Mongol troops breached the fortified gates and seized the city. Zhongdu thus fell into the hands of Genghis Khan, marking a turning point in the history of northern China. This conquest, emblematic of the Mongolian tactical superiority, resulted in the partial submission of the Jin dynasty, which was imposed with vassal status and had to henceforth pay regular tribute to Genghis Khan. It was a form of humiliation for the Jin, forced to acknowledge the supremacy of the Great Khan over a vast territory that, a few decades earlier, belonged to them outright. The impact of the fall of Zhongdu was not limited to the Jin dynasty alone. It symbolized the swift efficiency of an army based on rapid cavalry and tactical versatility, which for the first time on such a scale was equipped with sophisticated siege machines. Chinese engineers, forcibly enlisted or engaged out of necessity, played a crucial role in this evolution. New techniques, such as the strategic use of battering rams under the protection of wooden mantelets, or the deployment of trebuchets capable of hurling massive stones beyond the walls, demonstrated Mongolian adaptability. With these innovations, the Mongol Empire, once known only for its formidable mounted archers, transformed into a more complete military power, capable of tackling both open-field battles and long, complex sieges. The conquest of Zhongdu in 1215 thus marked the end of an era for the Jin, now in constant retreat, and the beginning of a new political order for northern China. Genghis Khan, buoyed by this success, implemented a system for collecting tributes, ensuring a flow of resources to finance his future campaigns. The Mongols, skilled in managing conquered territories, often left some local administrators in place while appointing their own overseers to ensure loyalty and the regular payment of taxes. This method of partial vassalization allowed for the continuity of agricultural and artisanal production, the fruits of which benefited the expanding Mongol Empire. Many craftsmen and scholars were forced to join the Khan's court or other Mongol cities to contribute to the technological and cultural advancement of their new masters. During this period, Genghis Khan's reputation reached far beyond northern China. Tales of his victories spread along trade routes, accompanied by legends about the Mongol ruler's relentless, yet often strategic conduct. Merchants from Central Asia relayed the story of the Mongolian weapons' effectiveness to the caravanserais of Western Asia and the Middle East, feeding a sense of dread in distant kingdoms. While the Jin dynasty struggled to reorganize, trying to avoid the fatal destiny of a rapid downfall, Genghis Khan consolidated his gains and already considered other campaigns, enticed by the opulence of cities further south and intrigued by the possibility of pushing his conquests beyond the borders he had known until then. However, for the moment, northern China was subjected to a tribute regime, and the once powerful Jin found themselves juggling between resistance, caution, and the obligation to meet the Mongolian demands. After consolidating a vast domain in East Asia, the Mongol leader turned his gaze westward, towards Central Asia and the Middle East. This ambition was not trivial. It profoundly affected the regional balance and disrupted long-established empires. To understand this essential phase of Mongol expansion, one must first grasp the strategic and economic importance of the Silk Road, observe the powers in place in this area, and then focus on the decisive conflict with the Khwarezmian Empire, marked by the incident of the city of Otrar and the lightning military campaign from 1219 to 1221. At the end of this conquest, the Mongols took their first steps into the heart of the Persian and Arab world, triggering a shockwave that resonated far beyond Central Asia. At that time, the Silk Road constituted the most prized commercial artery of the Old World. It stretched from China to the Mediterranean, irrigating the cities and oases along its path. Luxury goods like silk, spices, or precious stones circulated, as well as ideas, religions, and scientific knowledge. Caravans, composed of merchants, camels, and sometimes elephants, traveled immense distances across deserts and high mountains. This route necessarily passed through zones controlled or contested, notably in Central Asia, where several powers shared territories and resources. Among them were the Kara Khitans, heirs to an ancient dynasty of Chinese origin who had settled in the West, and especially the flourishing Khwarezmian Empire under the reign of Shah Muhammad II. The Kara Khitans initially dominated a region situated between Mongolia and Central Asia, inherited from the Liao Empire after its fall in northern China. Their presence, weakened by internal conflicts and the growing pressure from nomadic tribes, was no longer as solid when Genghis Khan considered moving westward. As for Khwarezm, it encompassed a vast territory covering parts of present-day Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Iran. Shah Muhammad II, ambitious and proud, had managed to expand his influence by subduing some city-states in Central Asia and maintaining an active trade network along the Silk Road. This geopolitical configuration made Central Asia a region coveted by anyone who could control not only the caravan routes, but also the economic resources that resulted from them. Genghis Khan, for his part, had already demonstrated his willingness to impose a new order based on military power, discipline, and the terror he inspired. After subduing or vassalizing several northern Chinese dynasties, he also sought to secure the western flanks of his growing empire. His diplomatic envoys attempted to establish commercial and political agreements with the forces present on this route. It was in this context that the diplomatic incident of Otrar occurred in 1218. One of the major triggering events of the confrontation between the Mongols and Khwarezm. This city, located on the Syr Darya, a river in Central Asia, lay at the crossroads of important routes on which regional trade depended. According to reports, Genghis Khan sent a trading caravan consisting of several dozen men to the Khwarezmian Empire. Officially, these travelers carried precious goods intended for trade, but they also bore a diplomatic mission to consolidate peace and strengthen economic ties with Shah Muhammad II. The latter, distrustful, accused these merchants of espionage. The governor of the city of Otrar, acting on behalf of the Shah, arrested the caravan, confiscated the goods, and ordered the execution of most of the traders. This cold and calculated attack on emissaries, supposed to be protected by the customary right of hospitality, put Genghis Khan in a black fury. He first attempted to obtain peaceful reparation by demanding the delivery of the guilty governor. The Shah, confident in his strength and perhaps misinformed about Mongol power, refused and, on the contrary, had the ambassador sent by Genghis Khan to resolve the dispute executed. In In 1219, Genghis Khan then launched a vast punitive campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire. The Mongol troops, estimated at several tens of thousands of battle-hardened horsemen, set off to the west, crossing steppes and mountainous passageways. Unlike many previous invaders, the Mongols had discipline and mobility that were unmatched. Their intelligence skills allowed them to divide the army into several columns, each advancing along distinct routes to surprise local garrisons. Historians often refer to this operation as an emblematic example of medieval blitzkrieg: outflank, divide, encircle, and strike. One of the first major targets was the city of Ochar itself, besieged and then captured after several months of fighting. No clemency was granted to the governor responsible for the massacre. According to some chronicles, he was executed with brutality intended to leave a lasting impression. Following this, Genghis Khan sent detachments to other prosperous cities located along the Silk Road and known for their insubordination. Bukhara, a rich cultural and commercial metropolis, fell into the hands of the Mongols in 1220. This capture symbolically marked the rapid advance of the steppe horsemen into sedentary regions, renowned for their universities, libraries, and majestic mosques. The accounts report that Genghis Khan addressed the terrified inhabitants, telling them he was the scourge sent by the heavens to punish their sovereign. Samarkand met the same fate shortly thereafter. There too, the Mongol strike force easily broke into the defensive chains, using terror and diversion to sow panic. In addition to the fast-moving cavalry and mounted archers, the Mongols were able to make use of the engineers recruited during their previous conquests in China, mastering the art of siege and ballistics. In Samarkand, the city gates were forced, and a large part of the population faced reprisals and looting. Mosques and palaces were sacked, and the walls partially destroyed to prevent any future resistance. Urgench, another large urban center of the time, represented an even greater challenge, as it was an important city for trade and appreciated by the local elites. However, its capture was inevitable. The Mongols left only ruins in their wake, imposing massive massacres to quell any inclination of resistance. Merv, another prosperous city where ulamas, scholars and merchants mingled, was not spared. Later testimonies describe this episode as an extreme example of the scorched earth tactic adopted by the Mongols to definitively break the Khwarezm's ability to respond. Faced with this military avalanche, Shah Muhammad II tried to reorganize his forces, but found himself outpaced by the enemy's flexibility. The large sedentary armies he summoned could not compete with Mongol mobility. Quickly, panic spread through the state apparatus in distant provinces. The Shah abandoned certain strongholds and chose to flee, hoping to find a safe refuge to regroup his loyal followers and mount a counterattack. But the Mongol columns pursued him over a vast area ranging from the shores of the Caspian Sea to present-day Afghanistan. Unable to rally enough support, undermined by desertions and shaken by the enemy's speed, he died in exile, isolated and weakened in 1220 or 1221, according to sources. Thus, the empire he had so bitterly defended collapsed within 2 years, demonstrating the brutality and efficiency of Genghis Khan's army. The consequences of this lightning conquest on the Middle East proved immense. The Khwarezmian Empire, already crucial for the commercial and political stability of the region, was left in tatters. Caravan routes were disrupted, many merchants perished, and the devastated cities could no longer ensure the economic exchanges of the past. The Silk Road, although still used by some merchants willing to take risks, lost part of its vitality in the areas ravaged by pillaging and the taxes imposed by the new Mongol rulers. For some cities, it took decades to recover from these destructions, and some never regained their former glory. At the international level, one can speak of a global economic impact, since the circulation of goods coming from China or going to Europe partially passed through these territories. The disappearance of the Shah also revealed a political vacuum that quickly aroused new envies. From a cultural standpoint, the contact between the Mongols and Persian or Arab populations brought about changes that were felt in the following decades. The introduction of new techniques, reorganization of local governance, and the emergence of collaborations between scholars from various regions. However, in the immediate aftermath, the survivors of the invasion lived in constant fear that the Mongol horsemen would once again burst in to demand obedience or impose heavy tributes. This first Mongol incursion into the Muslim world thus served as a prelude to further expansions. Some princes and emirs of the region wanted to negotiate with Genghis Khan or his generals, while others attempted to form alliances to counter the invaders. But the wave of destruction that had swept over Khwarezm had indisputably demonstrated the horde's determination to tolerate no deviation from its demands. It had also exposed the extent of its military prowess, built on intelligence, diplomacy, or terror, and a perfectly honed military organization. Politically and administratively, the Mongol ruler showed remarkable pragmatism. Aware that the conquered territories needed stable governance, he established the role of darugachi. This term refers to governors or special commissioners dispatched to subjugated regions to represent Mongol authority. The darugachis were tasked with collecting taxes, ensuring local security, and enforcing decisions issued by the Great Khan. In certain areas, primarily urban ones or areas already equipped with strong administrations, they relied on local elites whose collaboration facilitated the transition and helped prevent revolts. The Mongols also adapted to the complexity of each region. They could leave a local prince in place provided he recognized the central authority and committed to paying tribute. This administrative flexibility aimed not only to consolidate Mongol power, but also to minimize the risk of uprisings. Another notable aspect of Genghis Khan's policy was religious tolerance. In a medieval Asia characterized by religious diversity, Buddhism, Islam, Nestorian Christianity, shamanism, Taoism, among others, Genghis Khan refrained from imposing a single religion. Although he and many of his warriors were animists or shamanists, he believed that persecuting the followers of other religions risked fueling rebellions that the nascent empire did not need. For the Mongol leader, the essential was to solidify his political authority while rallying as many subjects as possible to his cause. To seal this neutrality, he occasionally granted fiscal privileges to religious institutions, sometimes exempting their priests, imams, and monks from certain taxes. This policy of confessional benevolence also endorsed the maintenance of schools, libraries, and monasteries in various parts of the empire, contributing to the transmission of knowledge and, paradoxically, to the spread of cultural diversity. Far from being a factor of division, religion sometimes became a springboard for dialogue between the Mongol power and local communities. In the context of centralization, a fundamental tool for harmonizing territory management was the use of the Uyghur script as an administrative basis. The Uyghurs, a Turkic people sedentary in the Tarim Basin region, already possessed a long scriptural tradition. Genghis Khan, seeking an alphabet suited for transcribing the Mongolian language, adopted this usage to disseminate decrees, laws, and military orders throughout his lands. It was a strategic choice. The Uyghur writing, simpler to adapt to Mongolian sounds than Chinese or Arabic writing systems, allowed for the unification of imperial documentation. It also served as a model for setting up registries, taxes, and censuses, facilitating coordination across different levels of administration. Thanks to this standardization, the orders from the Great Khan's court could be quickly and accurately spread, thereby reducing the risks of misunderstandings or falsifications. Integration of conquered peoples was another pillar of the success of the Mongol imperial project. Instead of simply subjugating the vanquished, Genghis Khan knew how to take advantage of the skills they possessed. The craftsmen, engineers, and scholars, captured or enlisted after the conquests, were not necessarily enslaved or executed. On the contrary, they could receive privileged status and be entrusted with specific missions depending on their areas of expertise. Chinese engineers, for example, excelled in the art of designing siege machines, assault towers, catapults, and improved battering rams. Genghis Khan, keen on enhancing the Mongolian military arsenal, encouraged the learning and adaptation of these techniques, which gave his troops a clear advantage in later campaigns. Similarly, Persian craftsmen excelled in the manufacture of composite bows, luxury textiles, and jewelry. Their talents were greatly appreciated and contributed to the prestige of the central power, whether for trade or for financing new expeditions. In this perspective, the employment of translators and scribes from various origins proved fundamental. The Mongols, in contact with so many different cultures, quickly needed complex linguistic services. Interpreters allowed communication with the literate elites of the conquered regions, the negotiation of trade treaties, and especially the management of a burgeoning bureaucracy. Scribes of Chinese, Persian, Uyghur, or Arabic origin were thus able to produce official documents in several languages, ensuring administrative efficiency. The constant exchange of information and ideas also fueled an environment conducive to innovation. Medical techniques, commercial formulas, or codes of law could thus circulate throughout the entire empire. This cultural and intellectual mix became one of the driving forces of Mongol domination, helping to fill the initial lack of administrative institutions structuring traditional nomadic life. At the turn of the 12th and 13th centuries, as the incredible rise of Genghis Khan was just beginning, the complex personality of this Mongol leader was already emerging. For anyone who wishes to understand the legend, they must first delve into stories that sometimes defy reason. The history of Genghis Khan is indeed punctuated by unique anecdotes, revealing in turn his clemency and his cruelty. He left behind an aura mixing terror and fascination, punctuated by devastating massacres, gestures of respect towards admirable enemies, as well as rumors so striking that they have passed through the centuries. The cruelty of Genghis Khan is embedded in collective memory, notably through stories of massacres of unprecedented scale. One of the most cited examples is related to the conquest of the city of Nishapur around 1221, as Mongol armies swept through the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia. According to some sources, Genghis Khan decided to completely raze this city, causing the death of a considerable number of inhabitants. Legend has it that this extreme brutality was triggered by the death of a family member, possibly one of his grandsons, during a local revolt. Whether true or exaggerated, the episode of Nishapur forged the image of a ruthless conqueror whose vengeance could strike an entire people. In the same series of campaigns, Samarkand, Bukhara, and other cities suffered a similar fate. The survivors, if there were any, were reduced to slavery, while the notables deemed traitors were executed. These stories, sometimes amplified by oral transmission, aim to demonstrate that no disobedience against Genghis Khan went unpunished. The conquest of the Western Xia dynasty was one of the last major military challenges faced by Genghis Khan. His decision to undertake a new campaign stemmed from several factors. On one hand, the dynasty, feeling threatened by the growing power of the Mongols, broke some vassal obligations imposed during earlier campaigns. On the other hand, taking control of the trade corridors crossing the Tangut territory offered the prospect of a new source of wealth and military resources. Moreover, Genghis Khan deemed it crucial to consolidate his conquests, especially in northern China, before retiring or preparing other expeditions. This ambition, coupled with the desire to crush any potential adversary, prompted him to mobilize a substantial force and organize a methodical attack plan. The campaign against the Tanguts begins around 1226, nearly 2 decades after the first major Mongol victories in northern China. By this point, Genghis Khan is already an old man, probably in his late 60s, and the fatigues of war weigh heavily on his health. Nevertheless, he remains determined to pursue his ambition of total control over the steppe and the fringes of China. The Mongols, masters of maneuver and mobility, quickly penetrate into Tangut territory. Despite the agility of the elite Mongol forces, the war drags on as the fortified cities of the Western Xia resist. The battles are fought in hard-to-reach areas, putting a strain on the horses and supplies. As the campaign unfolds, Genghis Khan's health becomes a sensitive issue within the Mongol high command. The chronicles of the time, although fragmented, suggest that the Great Khan suffers from various ailments. He might have been weakened by old wounds or infections related to military life. Some accounts also put forward the hypothesis of a fall from a horse during a battle or a storm, an incident that would have worsened his already fragile condition. Despite these difficulties, Genghis Khan continues to lead his troops, sometimes from a fortified camp or a fallback base positioned behind the front lines. The military efforts eventually bear fruit. Slowly but surely, the Mongol forces break through the Tangut defenses and subdue several key cities. The annals mention prolonged sieges, where the use of Chinese engineers and war machines becomes crucial to overcome the thick ramparts. By early 1227, the Western Xia is practically in a state of collapse, and its ruling class is forced to negotiate its surrender. Amidst this final assault, Genghis Khan is increasingly weakened. It is said that he maintains regular contact with his generals via horse messengers while conserving his strength to witness, at least symbolically, the fall of the Tangut kingdom. It is during this tumultuous period, in the summer of 1227, that the death of Genghis Khan occurs. Historical accounts diverge on the exact circumstances of his death. Some speak of a severe infection, worsened by fatigue and malnutrition. Others mention a fall from a horse that resulted in a fatal injury. There are also theories suggesting the combined effect of advanced age and the constant stress of the military campaign. Whatever the case, the passing of the founder of the Mongol Empire marks a major turning point, not only for the history of the steppe, but also for all of Eurasia. His influence would endure well beyond his death, shaping the destiny of many peoples in the centuries to come. The question of his burial site remains one of the most persistent mysteries of Mongol history. According to oral tradition, Genghis Khan is said to have wished to rest in a secret place, away from prying eyes. It is told that his funeral procession, in order to preserve this secret, killed everyone they encountered on their route. Other versions mention more peaceful methods, such as dispersing the earth taken from his encampment. Today, many archaeological expeditions still search for his presumed tomb in the Khenti region of eastern Mongolia. No formal discovery has confirmed the exact location, so the legends continue to blossom and fuel the fascination with this legendary figure. Alongside the organization of the funeral, the succession of the Great Khan is put in place. The lineage of Genghis Khan includes several sons, among them Jochi, Chagatai, Ogedei, and Tolui. However, Jochi dies before his father, around 1227, fueling uncertainties about the legitimacy of his potential heirs. Some consider that Jochi, suspected of being born from a forced union between Genghis Khan's mother and a rival, had an uncertain status within the imperial family. Despite these controversies, the other sons are recognized as legitimate princes, and a division of the empire, in accordance with steppe customs, is prepared to preserve a relative peace among brothers and cousins. In this context, the effort to achieve consensus becomes crucial. After the patriarch's disappearance, the Mongolian tradition involves convening a grand council, the Kurultai, where the succession is decided. Chagatai, known for his intransigence, supervises difficult campaigns, while Tolui, with control over the elite regiments, represents a formidable and ambitious candidate. Nevertheless, they both compete with Ogedei. Ultimately, Ogedei is designated as the Great Khan in accordance with the wish expressed by Genghis Khan before his death. According to several accounts, he recognized in Ogedei a talent for administration and diplomacy. Thanks to this choice, imperial cohesion is preserved despite latent tensions, and Mongolian expansion can continue without causing a major fratricidal war. In the immediate aftermath of Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire is formally divided into 4 great ulas, each entrusted to one of his surviving sons or their heirs. Chagatai obtains the Central Asian region that will bear his name. Ogedei, as Great Khan, governs from Karakoram and controls the heart of the empire, as well as most of Mongolia. Tolui, for his part, receives the original family territories, mainly in eastern Mongolia. As for the descendants of Jochi, they will maintain a powerful domain over the western steppes, laying the foundations of the future Golden Horde. This division, while avoiding an immediate conflict, nonetheless foretells political complexity to come, as each branch retains a certain autonomy. Despite this fragmentation, Ogedei's investment as Great Khan perpetuates the dynamic of conquest initiated by Genghis Khan. At the dawn of this new era, the conqueror's legacy continues in an empire now vast and plural, ready to leave a lasting mark on the history of the world. Genghis Khan not only forged a vast empire, he also left an unprecedented human and geopolitical mark on the world. His private life, marked by multiple marriages and concubines, reflects his intent to bind the tribes under his rule through alliances, often forced. Genghis Khan officially recognized only 4 sons from his marriage with Bürte, Yoshi, Chagatai, Ogedei, and Tolui. But due to his immense harem of hundreds of concubines, it is highly probable that he fathered dozens, if not hundreds, of other children who do not appear in the official historical records. The extent of his descendants, however, is not limited to these direct children. In 2003, a genetic study analyzed the Y chromosome, exclusively passed from father to son, in several Central Asian populations. Researchers found that around 16 million men alive today, or 0.5% of the male global population, share a specific Y haplogroup, which traces back to a common ancestor from the time of the Mongol Empire. Given the historical context and the marital practices of the Mongols, scientists attribute this massive transmission to Genghis Khan himself or one of his close descendants. Indeed, after his conquests, his sons and grandsons continued his expansion and applied the same strategy. They married local princesses and took many concubines, thus ensuring the spread of their lineage over vast territories, from China to the Persian Empire. Yet the legacy of Genghis Khan is not limited to these biological roots. He imprinted his empire with an unprecedented political and administrative organization, laying the foundations for a Pax Mongolica that secured the famous Silk Road and facilitated the dissemination of new techniques and knowledge. His reign reformed the military practices of the time by introducing rigorous military discipline, a structure based on meritocracy, and an art of tactics with formidable efficiency. The fall of the great empires he faced, from northern China to the Khwarezmian Empire, signaled the advent of a new world order of which he was the initiator. From west to east, the memory of his conquests long gave the image of a barbaric and destructive invasion. European chronicles, in particular, perpetuated the terror inspired by Mongol horsemen, sowing the idea that Genghis Khan and his descendants were the scourges of God. However, recent studies and historical rediscoveries offer a more nuanced view of his reign. Beyond ruins and massacres, his decisive role is now acknowledged in the rise of intercontinental trade, the spread of siege engineering technology, and the relative religious tolerance imposed in conquered territories. In the eyes of modern Mongolia, Genghis Khan is much more than a conqueror. He embodies the very soul of the nation. His political, military, and cultural heritage, still taught and celebrated, represents a major identity foundation. A true founding myth, he remains, for many Mongols, the example of a visionary leader who transcended tribal divisions to unite the steppe under one banner. Whether in literature, politics, or tourism, his figure continues to inspire pride and fascination.